of Commerce. I'm sure I've met most of you on here today, but if not, welcome, and nice to virtually meet those of you who I haven't met in person. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's Navigating COVID-19 webinar with Daniel Fay of Bren Daniel. Daniel is here today to talk about something we're hearing a lot about, our new normal. There is a good possibility that we may never get back to normal in the way we do our business. We will have to adjust the way our businesses operate moving forward. Daniel will review practical information on business continuity, planning, and leave you with a solid, thorough plan for preparing for a pandemic situation. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it in the Q&A box, and we'll do our very best to answer your question at the end of this presentation. If you are commenting in the chat box, would you please address your message to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your post, as it may be of interest to all. There is also the option to address your message to all panelists, which only myself and the presenter will be able to see. Just a little bit of housekeeping there on our Zoom this morning. It is now my pleasure to introduce Daniel Fay, Managing Director, Bren Daniel Productions Corp., a Halifax-based company specializing in project management certification support. Dan provides organizations around the world with a framework for business management and executive excellence. Dan has conducted programs for business managers and leaders in business analysis, project management methodologies, and leadership principles. Dan has been both a selected and invited speaker at international management symposiums and conferences in China, Canada, the United States, Europe, and Asia. Dan has performed business analysis and project management roles for project teams ranging from 3 to over 300 members. Thank you, Dan, for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Barry. Let me just share that screen now. Oops, there we go. I can do this. Perfect. So, continuity planning. You guys know as well as I do, we live in a dynamic world. Things are changing all the time. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, we've almost been forced, I guess, into change. Some organizations change all the time anyway, and part of continuity planning is always knowing what we're going to be doing next. And I guess right now we don't have a clue what we're going to do next. However, if our employees, if our customers, if everybody like that thinks we're not going to see, or we don't know what's happening next, they're going to lose confidence in us. Now, the good news, bad news is our organization was very involved in the H1N1 virus in 2009 and supporting organizations in their continuity planning. So I don't know if this is good or not, because I had a presentation for there and I was a little shocked with how consistent it is with what we're doing now. So, technology, I can do this. So the plan for the session. And if you work in project management, you know a plan is a plan and it changes all the time. But this is what we're planning to do. We'll talk about COVID-19, talk about pandemic planning, putting in place, what is a business continuity plan, what needs to change, which is the how, but we'll get to that. Putting a management framework in place so that you give confidence to the suppliers society that you have a grip. And then you have to determine what the change is going to be, create the change and lead the change. And so we're going to talk a fair bit about being in that leadership role of implementing the change. So COVID-19 itself, I'm going to play my Donald Trump card and say, I'm not a doctor. Okay, so you probably know more about it than I do. I guarantee that. But what I do know and how it impacts our business is the breadth of it. It's hitting everybody. It's hitting our suppliers. It's hitting, yeah, you know this as well as I do. The other thing about COVID-19, and this is sort of a crux of this presentation, it impacts people. It's not really impacting our computers. However, I have heard that the internet has been dropping in some residential areas because of the use. So let's really look looking at our people and when we're replanning our approach in our business, it basically means we have to replan how we use our people. And when I talk about people, we're not just talking about employees. We're talking about customers, suppliers, the entire market that we're working in. There is going to be a second wave. And one of the things you might be looking at is saying, well, Dan, maybe we should have done this continuity planning stuff last September. And wouldn't it be amazing if you had a continuity plan in place last September? Because when this COVID happened, you could have turned to the team and said, hey, remember that thing we did? Let's do it. However, there is going to be a second wave. And that's why putting in place now is going to be critical. It'll give people confidence that we have control of our business now, even though we probably don't, but it's giving that perception. And it's letting people know when September hits, and it probably will, we know what's going on. Now, I know the last bullet has numbers and percentages and stuff, and it's going to change for every single business. But what you have to do is come up with a plan that says, if we don't have people for a long period of time, how are we going to do things? There are some people out there saying we're in a 2-year cycle here. That's going to be 2 years before we're back to normal. Okay. Now, one of the key things in controlling your business and continuing your business is your confidence level. Now, some people are going to disagree with this, but that's okay. But stress is a choice. I'm sure you've seen instances where people get stressed out by something and other people not stressed at all. So with regards to your business, you cannot be stressed about where your business is going. It's life. It's how things go. It's the environment we're working in. How do we make our business work within the environment that we're working in? So with continuity planning, as mentioned, it's all about the people when a pandemic hits. And this quote comes from the 1918, 1919 Spanish flu. Okay, but it still applies. This COVID is not a one-time occurrence. If your organization is planning to be around for 20, 30, 40, whatever years, there's going to be a number of these things.
Excuse me, Dan.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Dan. I'm just getting a question that they can't hear you very well.
Oh.
Maybe just turn up your volume there a little bit.
Let's see if I can figure out how. There's that.
Turn that up. Crank up the volume.
No, I got it on and off.
Okay, maybe a little closer.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, perfect.
How's
Thanks,
that?
Dan. Perfect.
That work?
Let's do it. Okay.
Okay. So from my recollection, we had SARS in 2003. We had the bird flu in 2006. We had the H1N1 in 2009. I'm sure something happened in 2014, 15 that I can't remember. And now we have this. So in order to succeed, your organization has to be agile. It has to be flexible. It has to be able to go with the flow easily. And I know that that's really pushing it. And when I say your organization, I guess I'm also saying your people. Your people have to be agile. Your people have to be flexible. And so you have to look at your workforce and say, are those the attributes of the people that I have? Because what we've gone through is we came from normal. We're going through a pandemic, and we're not going back to normal. Now, the key thing is to think of, I don't think we want to do that anytime. Forget about COVID. I don't think I want my organization of 2020 to be the 2019 organization or the 2002 organization. I mean, you just don't want that. Our organizations have to be continually, daily moving forward. So there is going to be a new normal. If you get rid of that word pandemic on those 3 little boxes and put in CEO Bob quits, or new technology becomes available, or we move into a new building, things that happen sort of normally, we have to have a new way that we do business. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately for some people, that pandemic has pushed the issue. So now what happens is we've changed the way we're doing business on the 22nd of May, 2020. Is today our new normal? If I was to challenge you and say, the way we do business literally today is the way we're going to do business for the next 8 months, are you set up for success? And that is definitely something you have to have a look at. And it's something I'm challenging you with. Because a lot of what we are doing is going to become our new normal. I heard on the news today, Shopify has announced that now permanently everybody's going to work out of home. They've shifted their business model. They've had people working out of home. It's working great. And someone said, hey, so I'm challenging you that I think there's things that your organization is doing in a reactive mode that you're looking at and going, this isn't so bad. Maybe we need to adopt this as the way we now do business. But what is going to happen is wave 2. Now, before we hit wave 2, we have to have our act together. If we're still in crisis mode, if we're still in flipping around mode, wave 2 is going to be even tougher. So that's not going to be good. And that's why we need agile. That's why we need flexibility in the way we do things. So on these slides, and you'll have access to these slides, there's a few questions to assist you, maybe to start the discussion within your organization. So during the pandemic, what new resource needs have arisen? What has happened? And I'm not just talking people, other stuff as well. But what has happened as a result of the pandemic where you said, oh, I wish we had more of that. Or I wish my team had such and such a skill. And do you see these as a long-term change? Is this now the way you're going to do business? And is your organization set up? And when I'm talking about set up, I'm talking about, do you have the policies? Do you have the procedures? Do you have the infrastructure to really incorporate those needs and those changes into your organization? Because the sooner that we start to adopt our policies, procedures, and methods, the sooner people are going to have confidence that we actually have control of our business during this uncontrollable time. So one of the first things you have to put in play, and this is my project management hat on, is creating a business continuity plan. It should be part of the strategic plan. I think we do it in our heads all the time. If you're a small business, you're sitting and saying, well, if engineer Bob quits, maybe we'll start to do this. What we want to do is we want to put it in writing. Don't put in writing that engineer Bob's going to quit, but we want to put in writing what our vision is for our organization moving forward. Now, with the business continuity plan in the COVID type era, keep in mind that it's to continue business, not maintain business. We are not going to go back to September 2019. That's in the past. It was a really fun month, but let's get to January 2020. And what do we have to do to continue our business to get to January 2020? So what we're going to have to identify is the most important aspects of your business. Right? We're not going to have the personnel we had last year, perhaps. And by putting this the business continuity plan in place, it's a communications tool to everybody to say, hey, we know what's going on. We know how to run our business in crisis. Now, it is a plan. And if you work in project management, you know plans change almost daily. So the key is to have the plan, knowing that 3 days from now, we're probably going to have to update it. And next week, we're going to update it again. But at any point in time, I can sit there and say, here's the plan. If we don't have it in play, if someone says, well, what's happening to us next month? We go, who knows? Let's see what happens with COVID. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's not the way we want to do business. Just getting a plan to tomorrow would be cool. So that's what we're looking at with the business continuity. So my question to you, does your organization have some sort of documented, you might not call it this, but do you have a business continuity plan? Do you have something in play that says, if this happens, this is what we do? And the more important question for me is, do your junior employees know what it is? Do they have access to it? Because unfortunately, with a lot of these plans, they are created and put in some left-hand drawer, and nobody important. The workers really get to see it. Now, I have to say, one of the things I do love about the chamber is when you go in the chamber, your stuff is all over the walls. You can see your plans. You can see, I think that's absolutely great. And even though I've read them, I reread them every time I go in. And it gives me a better feel for the direction the chamber is going. And that's what we've got to do with our organization, is give people a feel for the direction our business is going. So the why is going to continue. Your vision and mission is going to continue. So we do project management support. Our role at Brent Daniel is to support organizations in strengthening their project management capability. The business products and services will shift. I'm not really convinced that classroom-based training is going to come back anytime soon. Cramming 45 people into the small business or the small office isn't going to happen anymore. I think hotels are going to have a challenge because this is business that's probably going to, So perhaps our products and services are going to shift, and our methods and plans are definitely going to shift. So the why our organization exists in, for us, supporting other organizations and strengthening their project management capability is always going to be there. We were lucky, I guess lucky is the right word. We already had a virtual capability. So in September 2019, about 50% of our business was virtual support. Today it's 100%, but we were able to make that shift. Some organizations cannot necessarily make that shift. And now we're challenging on whether we're ever going to go back into a classroom. The methods and plans have to adjust with the products and services that you are now providing, the changes to them. Having old methods and old plans for the way you did business in 2019 means your team is looking at the method going, well, that doesn't really apply anymore. So what's driving their direction? What's giving them, So we need to get these done. And this is where we have to get our team involved. Okay. So who is going to do it to get the job done? So ideally in the organization, in the best of times, every method and plan and task that our team does aligns with a product or service, which aligns with a vision and mission of our organization. And if I can do that, some small task, I shouldn't have called it small, but some task that my junior engineer has for Tuesday, they can actually align it with the vision and mission. They can go out in the hallway, look at the big chart and say, okay, now I know why I have to do this report. I know that's a bit of an ideal word, but that's really what we want to get to. So does your organization have a documented vision and mission? And again, do your junior employees know what it is? Okay. Now, admittedly, some organizations might have to totally change their vision and mission. It might be that in this new social distance world, we just don't do what we used to do. And I know there's a lot of challenges. So malls, I asked my 13-year-old what he thought about malls, and he said, I think they have to go. I'm not saying that's the way to go. Don't follow my 13-year-old just yet, although he's a lot smarter than I am. So the thing is, there may be organizations that revisit movie theaters. Why does your organization exist? I heard that there's actually a movie theater out in Vancouver that has been operating this entire time, but they do specialty things. They do like parties, and they don't have 400 people coming through. So maybe the way you do business has to change. So in creating accountability, for sure, we need to show people we have control. So come up with a business continuity planning team. Ideally, give it authority. It would be nice if it had a box on your org chart to show people how important it is. You need to designate a leader, a champion, and I recommend somebody with influence. Your CEO and your president and senior people. I know a lot of times you want to put those people in charge of these teams, but they're busy. They're trying to keep, perhaps this is someone that, So I don't know if any of you watch CNN, but there's Governor Cuomo from New York. And I do like the guy because he talks facts, he talks data, he doesn't trash the other politicians and stuff like this. So I like him. It's interesting though, because he'll be talking and someone will ask a question and they'll ask a really hard question. He turns to his left, and on his left-hand side, there's a young lady who knows everything. I mean, she stands up and she says 17% of this, and last month we did this, and we had a meeting on this date, and we made a decision on this, and it's on this website. She has absolutely everything. That's who I want running this team. Okay, that's who I'm looking for within my organization to run this team. It gives the perception you're in control. And I have to admit, when Cuomo talks, people interrupt him all the time. No one interrupts her. I mean, absolutely not. People are, yeah. It shows that we're being proactive. And I know you're thinking, but Dan, the COVID's already happened. Are we still being proactive? Yeah, because we're being proactive to wave 2. It also creates awareness that we know things are going to change and we want to continue. And it sets the direction for our business priorities. So does your organization have some sort of designated change manager? Do you have somebody that's actually mandated to sit and say, keep an eye on the world and let us know if our company needs to make a right turn at some point in time? And do your junior employees know who this is? Because your junior employees, they like tweets and they're on the latest technology and they just went through university. They know stuff. And you need someone, maybe a little on the older side, that a 22-year-old can go to and say, you know, I really think we need to do this. So we need those employees to know who we are. So in deciding your business priorities, you've probably already done a little bit of this. It's got to be driven by your strategic plan. If people understand why our company exists, every activity that has done has a little bit of a balance as to how well it helps us drive our strategic plan, right? As we are planning, as we are doing operations, we have to say, is this aligned with what we want to be doing? It really reinforces the why if you can have your business priorities, not really the value statements, but somewhere documented to say, this is the reason we exist. Here are the 3 driving factors. And I worked with an organization where you can disagree with it, but it said the customer's always right. And when I ran projects at that organization, if there was a decision, I would turn to the team and say, which one would the customer pick? And even though they'd be arguing, they'd all say, the customer would pick that one. And I'd go, great. Guess what we're doing? Now, within your organization, and you've seen this before, the Pareto rule, this 80-20 rule, 20% of your business is providing 80% of the impact. So the question is, do we cut back the organization? We'll only have 80% success, but are we spending time and effort towards things that are not giving us the biggest bang for the bucks? So have things change. What were your organization's priorities last September? And what are your business priorities now? Right? And have your customers changed their priorities and value? So I work in Scouts Canada and I'm helping with what's called the Atlantic Jamboree. It's a summer jamboree. So it used to be called Atlantic Jamboree 2020. But guess what? It's now called the Atlantic Jamboree 2021. Now, while we were planning for 2020, cost was the key driver. Every decision we made was cost driven. For 2021, we have to make sure it happens. We're actually now ready to invest some money because if it doesn't happen for 2 years in a row, it'll be devastating. So our priorities have changed. The way we make decisions on our meetings has changed. So with your organization, have things changed, and is this now part of the new normal? This is a very boring slide, so I'm not going to walk through it. But what it's talking about is not only do we have to have a continuity plan, we actually have to show that we're in control of it and we're managing it, right? So the business continuity plan says what we are doing, and the management plan says how are we going to manage the what we are doing. So it's got methods, roles. I do like this slide for you in that it's a bit of a checklist for you. What do you need to address in order for your clients in your industry to have the perception that you've got your act together? So pick a couple of bullets that really hit home for you and get them communicated. Now, when we're doing it and when we're trying to decide what the new normal is, we have to know what risk is. And risk comes from very small things to very high things. So I'll give you a quick example. I was in Geneva doing training, and the projector system in the place went down. We didn't have projectors anymore, you know, and I've got my slide deck. It's day 2 of a 5-day project management essentials, and I don't have a slide thing anymore. Now, I know some of the other courses actually left for the day and said, we'll come back tomorrow. What I did is I had a whiteboard. So I said, no problem. I did the whiteboard, full day, forget about the slides, forget about the projector. People had their workbooks. At the end of the day, I had 3 or 4 people come up to me and say, you know, today was a lot better than yesterday. That's the last time I used a slide deck for that course. Okay. So we've got to look at these risks. You know, you're doing things in your organization right now, like Shopify did, that you go, okay. So although we think there's uncertainty, constraint, these are all opinions. And what we've got to do is we've got to gather information. And you're doing it right now, and I give you credit for that. That's what this hour is doing, is you are gathering information, and hopefully you pull 1 or 2 nuggets that you're going to be able to show your team that you're in control, you're working from facts, okay? And I think most important is that you're committed and you do see and you're working towards success, okay? So what we want to do is we want to manage and control and almost take opportunity of risks. Whenever I worked in my projects and my team would say, oh, here's a risk, this might go wrong, I'd always say, how can we take advantage of that? How can we misspin that in our favor? And that's almost what we're trying to do. And it sort of sounds cold that in this time and effort that we're trying, but we're trying to maintain our business. We're trying to stay in control. And one of the things that has to happen is changing our processes, probably almost on a daily basis. Because I've seen this so many times, even pre-COVID, that organizations are trying to do a 6-person process with the 4 people that are left, with the hope that we'll have 6 people again. Hey, change it to a 4-person process. And then if you get 6 people again, change it back, okay? But if your team is working on a 6-person process with 4 people, they're expecting to fail. They have an excuse for not succeeding. So let's change things almost on a daily basis so that people are working towards a framework that they are comfortable within. So my challenge to you, do you have any 6-person processes left over from last September that are being done by your current 4 people? Let's get things shifted. And if you can do this on an ongoing basis, it gives the team confidence. A quick story, years ago, I was doing a project, and I'm very big on doing new things on my project all the time. So my team will come to me and say, hey, I think we should change the report to do this or whatever. And I go, great, let's do it. And I think that gives a little bit of ownership to the team. Anyway, we had a meeting, and one of the engineers sitting in the back wasn't too impressed. And he looked at me and said, so what's the change of the week? So I thought about it for a bit, and I thought, you know, that's not a bad idea. So we changed the agenda for our ongoing meetings, and the first agenda item was always change of the week, right? Now, the bad thing is that I did, you know, every time we did it, I'd say, oh, thanks to Robert in the back for coming up with the idea of change for the week. And he just, so that was probably a nice thing to do. But you have to change every day. You have to change of the week. And with the new normal, there are some things that are happening to your organization on the 22nd of May, 2020, that you have to decide, are these things here to stay? You have diminished revenues. Maybe this is the new normal. The pandemic is global. The way things are going, this is going to ripple for a long time. We can't really count on outside assistance because the outside assistance is just as impacted as us. We're not going to have all our people, or at least not where we want them to be. We really can never plan on overtime because people are looking at family first. I mean, it's just, and we're going to lose some people. You know, We're lucky here in Nova Scotia. It's not so bad. And the government department suppliers, I think they're going to change the way they do business as well. There's going to be an awful lot of online stuff there. And so what you have to do is you have to look at what's been happening to your company and almost assume that this is an ongoing thing. Waiting for things to go back means you're out of control in your organization. So what policies and procedures were most impacted by the pandemic in your organization? And did you change them, or are you just waiting for things to go back? And can they be changed? There might be some regulatory things that just, and unfortunately we might have to make a decision that this, like if regulations don't change, we might be out of business. Or are they part of the new normal? So let's build on our success. What adjustments have we made to get to today? And let's incorporate them into the organization to at least give that semblance of control, that we've got control for the next month. So in looking at your organization, and this is really what we did during the H1N1, we went into organizations and did this. We looked at what elements of your organization are providing the greatest impact, that 20%. What are they? How do I get at them? And I'm going to build on them. I'm going to strengthen them on them. Build on your successes. Okay. There's other elements that are no longer viable. Okay. Within the constraints, you're saying, I can't do this department with people working out at home. They don't really contribute to your strategic plan. The business is not really core. So stop doing them and get somebody else to do them. There are organizations out there that do the accounting, do the maintenance of equipment, and that is their life. That is their strength. So trying to get your team to do these things as second and third and fourth type, let's get out of that. Let's get people focusing on what they're really, really good at and get some people from outside to come back inside. That's really what we're looking at. As a quick story with EDS, I worked for EDS years ago. And when I worked for EDS, they belonged to General Motors. Now what happened was General Motors got a new president and he was looking at his car company. 35% of his employees were software engineers because everything had been automated, right? The accounting, the lines, everything had been automated. 35% of his company were software engineers, and there was no career path for software engineers in General Motors. So he cut EDS off. He just sort of said, go away, you're your own company again. And that's because he looked at what his company was, and you have to look at yours. Why does your company exist? Is everything you're doing working towards that? So what are your organization's business processes? This is a hard task to do, but I think it's important. Looking at everything your company does, prioritize them towards your core business, towards your strategic plan. And then those lowest priority items, do we really want to keep doing them? And I do realize this is a hard decision because there's people associated with some of those items, but in these times, and for moving forward and being the strongest we can be coming out of the pandemic, it might be the way that we have to go. Then we get our team involved, bottom up, by getting the team involved in changing the methods and changing how we do things. You have a shared ownership. They own the processes. They know what methods need to change because they've been complaining about them all the time anyway. And personally, I don't want a Dan solution. I mean, I went through university in 1983. You really want me driving your organization with 1983 ideas? But I know the right questions to ask to get those young bucks to come up with lots of creative, to get us to the new normal. Okay. The other thing is by getting your team involved, especially with a lot of people not being at work, it gives them confidence to come back to work. A lot of people are scared to come back to work, and that's because they're thinking of your environment as it was in September 2019. If we create a new environment that has their ideas, their methods, physical distancing, whatever it is we have, they're going to be much more confident to come back. Your customers are going to be much more confident to walk through your doors, and your suppliers are going to be much more confident. So as the business continuity plan team, I have to come up with a better name for that. They'll roll up the plans, they'll review them, they'll collate them, very high level, putting everything together. You have to be very careful, because you're going to want to, not to change the bottom level plans. Okay. I'd love to have somebody who's running this team to understand the leadership aspect of things, because if they veto any of the junior plans, people aren't coming back to work. Now we have a new definition of our organization, and we have to see if we have the right who, the right people in place. I've been with an organization where we redefined the division, and we did have people come to us and say, you know, we've looked at the new division, we've looked at the new objectives, we know where you're going, we just don't want to work here anymore. And that's fine. No, that's their decision. I don't have a problem with that. So that's what we have to look at, is who is the right new. So with the who, right, what resources do you need? What type of people do you need? What is your ideal new normal employee? Because we have some challenges. Employee availability, right? Remember we talked about, overtime is going to get a lot less. There might be people that just change. I'll give you a quick example, and I'll tell you a story, although my wife tells the story differently. So you might want to go with her story if she ever shares it with you. But with our first child, Brenda was working full time. And then we had Shannon, and Brenda did her maternity leave and all that cool stuff. And she came back to work for one day and said, yeah, this isn't happening. And she went into the company and said, I'm only working 2 to 3 days a week. And the company said, yeah, I don't think so. But anyway, if you know Brenda, you know she won the negotiation. So there was this back and forth, and that was actually the start of Bryn Daniel Productions Corp. way back then. But this is it. You have to have a plan for availability. Not everybody's going to want to work what they're doing now. If you have unique skill sets, if you have sole suppliers, if all of your business is driven by one customer, you're in trouble. Okay, we have to broaden just a little bit on this. So I think what COVID is allowing us to do is maybe look at some alternatives, look at some different ways to do things. And then once we have the resources in play, we need to modify our processes, and we do this a lot, to go with the new normal team. One of the things we have to be careful of is the equipment, because we have safety issues. So we can't come up with processes and equipment that need 4 people if we don't have 4 people. So what resource challenges have you had in the past month? Right? And have you adopted these, as the new normal? Is this the way that you think your organization probably should or could move ahead? So we want to make it safe. At the same time, we have to give our team a little bit of autonomy. So you may be aware of Theory X, Theory Y people. Theory Y people are people who get stuff done. You leave a Theory Y person alone for a week, they get more done during that week than you've ever seen. Theory X people, you leave them alone for 15 minutes, they're doing crosswords in the washroom. Okay? We have to treat our people like Theory Y people. And this list is almost like a Theory Y list, right? They're proven capability. They have international certifications. They know technologies. They're leaders. They're entrepreneurs. They're self-starters. These are all the things the chamber members have. So I'm preaching to the converted. And you being here shows you're one of these people. We have to manage our entire team like they are one of these Theory Y people. And I guess I would challenge you to say, if I was an outsider looking at your team, is this how I would define your team? Because to get to a new normal, we need to be there. So you may have discovered during the crisis that some of these things just aren't there. So what skills have you discovered are lacking? You know, what skills are you looking at and saying, oh, I wish I'd gone to that lunchtime learning on? Yeah. And what are you doing to incorporate them into your new normal? If you are saying that your team needs to work out of home, you need to do training on working out of home, the best way to work out of home, the technology of working out of home. And then you need to prepare the work environment, which might be their home. Okay. So you need training or retraining, depending on how mature your organization is, on pandemics. And maybe that's risk management education as opposed to pandemic education, right? You need to have some counseling. You have to change your methods of supporting team because there is fear out there. Some new skills they might need to work at home, cross-functional training, because every now and then at home they might get a call and say, hey, for the next hour you're answering the phone, or for the next hour you're dealing with customers, or whatever. I think there's a lot of that that's going to happen. And as we've mentioned a couple times, you need to get your team certified. The advantage of certification, it proves to customers, suppliers, that your team can do the job. Okay. And in support of that, update the processes. We're going to have an updated communication strategy. Cramming everybody into a room for an hour, I think, is a thing of the past. I think what we're doing right now is going to become more the norm. I know people like to hug every now and then, some people anyway, but we're going to have to figure out how to do that. Yeah, virtual hugs, that's the way we got to go. Right? We're going to have to improve our supplier relationships. One of the challenges, and you might have run into this, and I've heard it on the news with provinces versus the federal government and down in the States as well. Your suppliers have lots of customers. Are you an important customer to your supplier? Or are you number 27? Because quite honestly, if they only have 1,000 of something, yeah. So if you can improve your supplier relationships, it's going to be really critical. And I know it's tough because right now people are a little hesitant about contacting suppliers, contacting customers, but wow. And we've got to be prepared for the next wave. So with supplies, maybe it includes pandemic supplies and things like this, but I'm also talking about business supplies. What did you find that you were missing? So is there training you wish you had completed last September? Are there supplies that you said, oh, and you weren't able to go and get them? And what suppliers can come in and assist you with getting to the new normal? The nice thing about bringing other people in is they don't have ownership of your processes. And that's really what we were doing. We went into organizations and we'd say, yeah, that part over there needs to go. Now, internally, there were people going, oh, no, we spent 3 years developing that capability. They have ownership of it. As in bringing in suppliers, they don't have ownership of it. So they'll help you out. Updating your policies and practices. I revisited this. I didn't change it. Succession planning for critical functions. Now, if you do that thing where we get rid of all the non-critical functions, then it's succession planning for everything, everyone, okay? But we've got to have it in play. New restrictions. This is going to be dynamic because government regulations are changing all the time. But the thing is, if you can communicate on an ongoing basis that your company is adjusting, your company, some people didn't like them, but I liked getting the emails from the different organizations that say, hey, just so you know, our people are not washing their hands. We have splash guards. We have things. I thought that was good. And I have to admit, if there were organizations that were open that I hadn't gotten an email from, I'm not going there. So some of the lessons learned from H1N1 from our time doing that, I just pulled the slide and it's amazing how it still applies. You cannot over communicate, but the communication must be prioritized. It must be truthful. Not a lot of rumors, not a lot of whatever. You cannot be too safe. So getting customers, visitors, staff to stay home if they're sick, critical. Rearrange your floor plan. New norms, no more hugging, no more shaking hands, whatever the case is, right? Minimize using shared equipment. If you have equipment that someone uses in the morning and someone uses in the afternoon, you have to revisit that. And going to someone else's phone and using it and spitting on their phone, just stuff you have to. And some of the things that might impact a little more is staggering hours of work. I had a lot of organizations that fought that because our customers expect us to be here from 8 till 5. Well, let's change the customer's perception of who we are. Okay, let's change that. So maybe we stagger hours of work. I don't think it would be so bad, almost like a university, if there were certain parts of the bank or whatever that we just got from 2 till 4. So have a look at this list and figure out which of those apply to you. And then you have to take a leadership role. You have to believe that you can implement change in your organization, that you have the ability, you believe in this organization existing for years to come. Okay? It's not the way it is right now, but it's still going to be there. You have to trust your people. And I know that sounded whatever. I'm amazed how many people just don't trust their teams. What is your core value? You guys have already done number 5 by being a lifelong learner, right? So only 3% of university educated people take training on an ongoing basis. That came from some Harvard thing years ago and stuff like this. So you guys are already in the top 3%. So that's very cool. You're already the tip of the sword. So let's take that tip of the sword, get back to your organization. Dealing confidently with uncertainty, wow. Yeah, stuff's going to happen. And if we spun out of control every time stuff happened, yeah, that's not going to be good. So have a vision of where we're going, get energy from it, drive. So do these describe you? And quite honestly, the only way I think you're going to get to next year is if you have these sort of attributes and your team has these sort of attributes. So are you ready to lead your organization to a new normal? Okay, so now you know what I know. Just one last point before we get to questions is I really hope your organization is not in recovery mode. Recovery mode is going back. I want you to be in business continuity mode. I want you moving forward. I think it's very, very important because trying to get to the past, it's a tough thing to do. And it does mean your organization's in turmoil. It does mean your organization is not following a plan. It does mean it's more reactive. So try to get rid of that recovery mode mentality if that's where you're going. Let's move forward. Let's make things happen. Okay, Barbie, over to you. I think I have to get rid of my screen, right? So you can see your stuff. You're muted. Can I unmute you?
There you go. Sorry, folks. Hello. Well, that was a lot of information, Dan. And someone did ask if it's recorded, and yes, it is. And we share all of our webinars with participants, so you can certainly take this back to your team and practice what Dan shared. A couple of takeaways from me was you have to have a plan. That is necessary. All chamber members are theory why we get things done, and flexibility is key. So just a few areas that I really took away from this this webinar, and thank you so much, Dan. So I invite you to put your questions, and I will start with a couple that we've received. After I ensure my business is safe for my employees and customers, what should I be doing to ensure my business can operate, whether that is similar or different to how I operated prior to COVID-19? I think you covered some of that, but really quickly, Dan, a couple of points to that question.
Well, it's making sure that people understand the why your business exists, like we talked about, not necessarily the how. I think it's good to show people that you have control of changes. So maybe a little bit of an announcement, maybe signage. Signage is like really important. And we've all seen the signs on the doors. And I have to admit, when I went to an organization and it had a nice fancy sign that said, due to COVID, blah, 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 it gave me a different impression than the one that was written in crayon. So getting signage in front of your customers and in front of your location, if you have a location that says, we are open for business and we are keeping you safe, I think would be critical.
Great. And unfortunately, this may happen. A question is, what are some of the hiccups a company could face after reopening?
Well, there are risks, and a lot of risks we know are going to happen. Unfortunately, with some organizations, a lot of the risks are ignored. I think the biggest hiccup is our position in the supply chain. We have suppliers bringing stuff in. Are they post-COVID ready? We're going to our customers. Are they post-COVID ready? So the problem is we have to take ownership of ourselves. So I can't assume somebody coming into my building is okay. I probably have to put precautions in place at the front door. And that sounds sort of odd. Like, I'm not necessarily suggesting you need to take temperatures at your front door, but some organizations might need that. So I think the hiccup is, how many people do you have coming in and out all the time? What's your position in the supply chain?
Good, great answer. Kind of along the same line, how difficult is it to retool a business for life post-COVID?
I think it's easy. There are just so many tools and so many things out there. There's a cost associated with it, and I guess that's the hardest part. Am I willing to make the investment for people to work out a home consistently? Well, actually, I think it's a good example. A lot of people have one cell phone that they use at work and at home, and they have one telephone number. As a result, your employees might have 20 different plans, 20 different types of cell phone. Am I able to communicate with all my employees consistently? So I think that getting environment consistent is going to be a bit of a challenge in putting that sort of thing in play. Did I come anywhere close to answering the question?
Yep. I think so. There's yeah. And again, I welcome anyone to put their questions in the Q&A. We will be wrapping up very quickly in about maybe 3 minutes. We'd like to keep everyone on time. What if there is, and I don't know if it's what, I think we know there is going to be a second wave of closures. Where do we go from here? Because I think this has been very traumatic to our business community and some organizations. So if there's a second wave, which we're hearing, where do we go from there?
Well, it all depends on whether we learn from the first wave. I believe that if all you're doing during the first wave is getting to pre-wave, the second wave is going to have much more impact. But if we get through the first wave, sorry, I'm now thinking of Tom Hanks in Castaway, where he goes over the waves and he's waiting for the next one. We've got to build on our successes. What worked during the first wave, get those methods incorporated. And so when the second wave comes, we can almost just sit back and go, yeah, saw this coming, right? Do plan 17B-A.
Right.
And it gives that semblance we're in control.
All right. So the first wave is just training for the second wave?
Well, it's definitely in there. It's making people, because some people were surprised by this COVID thing. I'm not really sure they should have been because of the state of the world. And even with the second wave, I mean, everything's saying at least a second wave. So I think you have to plan for your business to change continually anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and always change, right? Flexibility is key. I will share just a little thing that we're doing at the chamber. We are looking at how do we get back to work and how do we get back to our chamber office. We've all been working remotely. As anyone would know who's come into our organization, we have a coffee machine in our small boardroom and in our large boardroom, and we have one for the staff in our staff area. So we're looking at having the staff be allocated, I guess, committed to a different, if there's 10 of us, 3 of us each use different coffee machines regularly, so we're not always all of us going to the one coffee machine as we would have done pre-COVID.
So are you going to put everybody who coughs into one coffee machine?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, if you have a sniffle or a cough, you go there.
That's it.
Okay, well, I think that's time to wrap up, and we're almost done. So we really do appreciate everybody being on with us this morning, and a reminder that this is recorded, and you can access. And I think the important thing is to share Dan's comments this morning with your team. Bring this back and share everything with your team. So thank you, Dan, for sharing your insights on how businesses can push through this pandemic.
You're welcome.
And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We are hosting more webinars every week with experts in economic recovery, in marketing, in labor law. Head over to halifaxchamber.com/events for a full lineup and get registered and join us and be seen on these webinars. This webinar, like I said, was recorded, so we will have that out to all attendees shortly after. Thanks again, everybody. It's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day. So enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the weekend, and stay healthy and safe, everybody.
Thanks very much, Barbie.
Thank you.